So, I've been noticing some weird stuff with my husband, Mark, for the last few weeks. I was sitting in the pickup line at my kid's school, which is already a nightmare. And I saw this toll receipt just sitting in the center console. He probably forgot it was there. It was for a plaza on the west side, which is a highway he has absolutely no reason to be on. And the car, it smelled, not like gym clothes or coffee, but like some kind of heavy cloying perfume. I don't wear anything like that. I actually can't stand that kind of smell. I just sat there staring at the receipt, while the line barely moved. I could see the kids coming out the doors, and I just felt, I don't know, frozen. The timestamp said Tuesday, at 11:15 p.m. He told me he was at the office finishing reports. He even texted me at 11 saying, "Almost done, babe. Don't. Wait up." I didn't call him or anything. I just put the receipt in my purse. The rest of the day was just a mess. I stopped at the pharmacy to get the kids' allergy meds and got stuck behind this woman who was having a huge fight with her insurance over a prescription. I sat there for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I could see the pharmacist just shaking his head. While I'm waiting, I check my email and see a notice from the mortgage company. Our property tax escrow was short, so the payment is jumping $300 in October, which is just great because everything is so expensive right now. I checked the balance in our joint savings and it looked off. Not empty, but there was a gap of about $12,000 that I couldn't account for. Finally got the meds and drove home. The first thing I saw when I walked in was the laundry. I'd forgotten to move the uniforms to the dryer, and they all had that sour, damp smell. I had to strip them and start the whole wash over. Just a great day. Mark gets home around 6 p.m. He kisses me on the cheek and asks about my day. He looks totally normal. Just the guy I've been married to for 15 years. Fine, I said. The mortgage is going up $300. Really, he said. That's crazy. I'll look into it this weekend. Did you go to the west side on Tuesday? I asked. He didn't even blink. No, why? The toll receipt. He paused for a second. Oh yeah. I had to run a quick errand for a client. I forgot to tell you, at 11 p.m. at night. It was a late meeting. Nancy, why are you interrogating me? He just walked into the kitchen and started making a sandwich. I didn't even argue. I just went to the laundry room and stared at the washing machine. The next few days were more of the same. I spent forever returning some stuff, just so I could get a coupon for the kids' winter coats. Standing in that line, I kept thinking about that perfume. It's very specific, it lingers. Then there was the driveway. The HOA sent another warning about algae on the concrete, so I spent Thursday morning trying to find a power washer. I finally found a guy for Friday, but he wanted an extra $50 because of where we live. I just paid it. I didn't have the energy to fight over $50. But then I noticed something with the phones. We have that location app for the kids. Mark usually keeps his on, but he's been forgetting to charge it lately. I was sitting on the couch Friday night and saw something weird. The app showed him at the office for 6 hours on Wednesday, but we have a shared calendar. I opened it up. There was an entry for Wednesday at 2 p.m. that just said appointment. Private. It was a recurring event. Every Wednesday for the last 2 months. I didn't ask him. I waited until he went to take a shower. Then I grabbed his iPad, the one that stays on the kitchen counter. I didn't have to guess his password, it's the kid's birthday. I didn't look for texts. I went straight to the banking app. He had a separate account. A private one. I didn't even know it existed. I scrolled through the transactions, and there was just a lot of money. Transfers for $5,000 here, $10,000 there. And the weird part was that the money was coming from an account in his late uncle's name, Uncle Arthur. Arthur died 6 months ago. He was wealthy, but he didn't have kids. So Mark was the only nephew. We were told the estate was tied up in probate and would take a year to settle. Mark had been complaining for months about how slow the lawyers were. But looking at the iPad, I saw the transfers. Mark hadn't been waiting for the lawyers. He had been siphoning money out of the estate account for months. He probably stole the passwords or something. But he was just taking it. He was stealing from his own inheritance and hiding it. And then I saw where the money was going. There were payments to a luxury apartment complex on the west side. The same area as the receipt, monthly rent, utilities, furniture. I just sat there in the kitchen, listening to the shower, running upstairs. It felt weirdly clear. It wasn't even the cheating part that hit me first. It was the lying about the mortgage, the complaining about the lawyers, the late meetings. Saturday was the school's annual fall gala. It's one of those things where you dress up and pretend to enjoy the food while talking to other parents. I spent the whole morning getting the kids ready, fixing their colors and making sure they didn't have stains on their shirts. I acted completely normal. I even helped Mark with his tie. As we were walking to the car, Mark's phone buzzed on the dresser. He was in the bathroom, so I just glanced at it. I didn't say anything. I just took a screenshot of the message and sent it to my own phone. When we got to the gala, I stood next to him, smiling and nodding while we talked to the principal. I could smell that perfume again. It was on him. This time it was on the lapel of his jacket, just a faint trace. I leaned in and said, "You forgot to clean your jacket." He stiffened. He didn't look at me, just kept smiling at the principal. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "The apartment on the west side." I said, "The one you're paying for with Uncle Arthur's money." He stopped talking mid-sentence. The principal was still talking about the new library fund, but Mark had completely blanked. He just stood there staring straight ahead while I continued to smile. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and showed him the screenshot of the text. "Who's the lawyer, Mark?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just stood there in the middle of the gym while the school band played in the background. We didn't talk the whole way back. Mark just stared at the road, gripping the wheel way too tight. As soon as we got inside, he started in on the whole "it's not what you think" routine. Says he was going to tell me, but he just didn't know how. I asked him, "How you don't know how to tell your wife you're stealing money from a dead uncle to pay for a secret apartment on the west side?" He swears he's not stealing. He brings up this guy, Steve E. Price, some consultant for probate law. According to Mark, Steve told him that if they waited for the court to settle everything, the state would just eat half of it in taxes and fees. So, the plan was to move the money into a private account to protect it. I asked him why a protection account pays for a luxury apartment. He tells me it's a corporate lease for networking. Apparently, Steve said he needed a place for meetings that wasn't his home office. He kept saying it was all for the family, a safety net. He looked so sincere that it was actually sickening. He either believed his own bullshit or he's just that good at it. The next morning, some random number calls me. I answer, and this guy with a very polished, very fake voice starts talking. "Nancy? Hi, I'm Steve Price. Mark mentioned we might be speaking soon. I asked him who he was again. He tells me he's the legal consultant for the Arthur estate. Then he says, "There's been a misunderstanding about the West Side property." He tells me it's just a way to keep the government's hands off the money for a bit, and that it's all perfectly legal, even if it looks weird on paper. He even warns me not to do anything that might alert the court, because that could freeze the whole inheritance. I asked about the apartment. He says it's just a utility for business, that Mark is doing this for me and the kids. I just hung up on him, didn't even say goodbye. Then I had to deal with the power washer guy. He showed up at 10 and started complaining that the algae on our driveway was industrial grade. He wanted another $20 because he had to use stronger chemicals. I just gave him the cash because I couldn't deal with him arguing while my head was spinning. Also, the guy had this weird whistling breath every time he spoke that made me want to scream. It was just irritating. While he was working, I went inside to look at bank statements, trying to figure out exactly when the mortgage jumped. I was in the app and noticed a recurring charge for $18.99 for some movie channel. None of us had watched it in a year. Wait, was it a year? No, maybe since last November. I tried to log in to cancel it, but my password didn't work. Mark's didn't either. I ended up digging through the shared iCloud passwords on my iPad, which is a total mess, honestly. Why do we have 3 different logins for the same utility bill? And found a login for the streaming service linked to an email I'd never seen. m.fleming.westgmail.com. I didn't confront him right away. I just searched that email and found a public Pinterest board. It was full of interior design, photos, mid-century furniture, velvet curtains, mood boards for a dream home. The board was titled Our New Beginning. I just sat there at the kitchen table, listening to that loud hiss of the power washer outside, scrolling through photos of a living room that wasn't mine. Around 2 p.m., Mark came home for lunch. He walked in and saw me with the iPad, but he tried to act casual. He mentioned the driveway looked great. I told him the power washer guy was a pain. Then I mentioned the movie channel and the email address. He stopped mid-stride. What email? Fleming West, I said. I told him I didn't know he had a second email, or a Pinterest board about a new beginning. He didn't even try to deny it this time. He just sighed and sat down across from me. He tries to tell me the apartment is just a space for him to breathe. Says has been under so much pressure with the kids and the house. He just needed a place where he wasn't dad, or the guy who fixes the roof. He swears it's not another woman, just his mental health. I asked him if his mental health costs $4,000 a month in rent. It's coming from the inheritance, he said. It's not touching our joint money. I told him he lied for months. He let me stress about the mortgage jumping $300 while he was playing house on the west side. He says he was trying to protect me from the stress. I didn't even answer. I just slid the iPad across the counter with the Pinterest board open. I asked him who it was for, because breathing room usually doesn't include a mood board for a nursery. He looked at the screen. There was a section called the nursery. Soft greens, a white crib, a rocking chair. He just went white. I didn't know it was on there, he whispered. I asked him if he didn't know he was planning a nursery. He tried to say it was a project, a design project, he says. Steve suggested looking into real estate investing and flipping luxury condos, and that open-concept nurseries are a trend right now. I waited until he left for the gym that evening. I went into the garage and got into his car. I didn't want to go through his finite-to-many notification, so I just plugged my phone into the CarPlay to see if it would sync. The recent destinations list popped up automatically. He hadn't cleared the history. There was the West Side apartment, the office, and then a recurring trip to a place called the Bloom Maternity Clinic. He'd been there 3 times in the last month. I sat in the driver's seat in the dark garage. I could hear the kids upstairs arguing over a video game. I took a photo of the screen. Then I opened our shared iCloud photos and went to the recently deleted folder. Mark thought he was being clever by deleting the evidence, but he forgot that folder keeps everything for 30 days. There were 12 photos. All of them were of a woman. She looked younger than me, maybe 28. She was wearing a white dress, leaning against a wall in that West Side apartment. In 3 of the photos, she was holding her stomach, the perfume. I remembered that smell on his jacket. I went back inside and started a load of laundry. I found a pile of the kids' soccer jerseys caked in mud from Saturday and threw them in the wash. The detergent cap was sticky again, and I spent a good minute trying to scrape the dried soap off the rim with my fingernail. I hate when the bottle leaks like that. It's just sloppy. As I was loading the machine, Mark walked into the laundry room, still in his gym clothes. He smiled at me. "You okay, babe?" he asked. I didn't look at him. I just pointed to my phone, which was resting on the dryer. I had the photo of the maternity clinic open. "Who's the baby for, Mark?" He stopped smiling and just stood there in the doorway. He was just standing there, still in his gym shorts, smelling like sweat and that expensive soap he'd started using a month ago. He didn't even try to grab the phone. He looked at it, then he looked at me. "It's not what you think," he said. I couldn't even look at him. I asked him if the maternity clinic was actually a gym, or maybe a place to get your oil changed. I told him to explain it now. He finally stepped toward me and tried to put his hand on my shoulder, but I backed away toward the washing machine. I didn't want him touching me. I wanted him to say it. He started talking in circles. Said the woman's name is Alina. He called it a mistake from 6 months ago right around when Uncle Arthur died. He claimed it was just a fling to deal with the stress of the estate, but then she got pregnant. He said he didn't know how to tell me, so he just started this whole second life to keep things separate. "Separate," I said. "You paid for a luxury apartment with stolen money to keep a baby separate from your wife and kids. I'm taking care of my responsibilities." "Nancy?" he shouted. I didn't shout back. I looked at the laundry. The soccer jerseys were finally done, but it'd put too much detergent in. There were these white streaks all over the dark fabric. I stood there for a minute, staring at the streaks, while he had a total meltdown in my laundry room. He said he was going to fix it, that he'd talk to Alina, and they'd figure out the baby, but that we could stay together. He told me he loved me, and that he just got lost. I didn't say anything. I walked past him, went into the kitchen and grabbed the iPad. I didn't want to hear about him being lost. I wanted to know where the money went. The next morning I was up at 6. Had to get the kids breakfast and out the door. While they were eating their Cheerios, the refrigerator started making this loud buzzing sound. I opened the door and saw a puddle of water at the bottom. The defrost drain was probably clogged again. I spent 10 minutes with a turkey baster and a pipe cleaner, sucking out ice and slime so the floor wouldn't warp. While I was crouching there, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from our shared iCloud account. Someone had edited a document. We have this shared folder for house stuff grocery lists, the lawn guy's number, the Wi-Fi password. I clicked the notification. There was a PDF there called Family Assets. I didn't recognize the handwriting in the scanned documents, but I knew the letterhead. It was a law firm in the city. The client wasn't Mark. It was Catherine F. Johnson, my mother-in-law. I ended up sliding down the cabinets until I hit the floor. Turkey baster still in my hand, scrolling through it. It was a blueprint. There were dates, amounts, instructions on how to move money from Uncle Arthur's estate into offshore shells and private trusts. And the beneficiary. It wasn't Mark, it wasn't me. It was the kids. The trust was for the child of Mark Johnson and Alina R. My chest felt tight. I stared at the screen. Catherine had been the one. She wasn't just in on it, she organized it. She'd introduced Mark to this girl. There was a message in the note from Catherine to Mark saying, "Mark needed a real heir, Nancy. We both knew you weren't providing the kind of stability the family needs." I mean, what does that even mean? Unstable? I've been the one keeping this entire family from falling apart for 15 years. I'm the one who remembers the doctor's appointments, the school plays, the property taxes, everything. And she calls me unstable? I sat on the linoleum, listening to my kids argue about who got the bigger bowl of cereal. That's when I realized Steve E. Price, a consultant once. A consultant. He was Catherine's personal lawyer. The whole protection account thing was just a lie, so I wouldn't look too closely while they moved money into a trust for the new baby. I didn't call Mark. He was already at work. I called Catherine. She answered on the second ring. She had that same polished, airy tone she always uses. The one that makes you feel like a guest in your own house. "Hello, Nancy? I trust the children are well." "I saw the documents, Catherine," I said. There was a pause, just a beat. "I assume you've gone through Mark's devices," she said. Her voice didn't change. "No panic, it was inevitable, I suppose." "You helped him," I said. "You helped him steal from his own uncle for what? A secret baby? Why would you do that?" "Mark is a Johnson," she said. I could almost hear her straightening her back through the phone. The estate was meant to provide for the future of the family. I simply ensured the funds went to a child who would be raised with the proper guidance. "You've always been very efficient, Nancy, but you lack the vision for what this family needs to be." I actually started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was just this weird sound. "Vision? Your vision is helping your son commit fraud and cheat on his wife." "Fraud is a strong word," she said. "We were just moving things around now. I suggest you be pragmatic. Mark loves you in his own way. But this baby is a reality. The trust is already established. The money is gone. Fighting it will only bring the court's attention to Mark, and you wouldn't want your children to have a father in prison, would you?" I hung up. I stood up and looked at the refrigerator. The drain was finally clear, but there was still a sticky residue of old spilled juice on the shelf. I grabbed a sponge and scrubbed it until the plastic was white again. I spent the rest of the day in a weird kind of trance, drove the kids to soccer practice. I sat in the car and scrolled through our joint bank account, looking at the missed expenses from the last 6 months. I found a recurring payment of $4.50 a month to a company called Elite Concierge Services. I'd always assumed it was some stupid gym membership or meal prep Mark had signed up for. I looked closer at the digital receipts in the shared email. It wasn't a gym. It was a prenatal care package, luxury vitamins, organic meal delivery, private nursing visits, all paid for through a credit card linked to the trust Catherine had set up. I felt sick, but it was a cold kind of sick. I kept taking screenshots. I saved everything to a private Google Drive account that Mark doesn't know about. Every transfer, every email from Steve Price, every snippet of those documents. Around 4 p.m., I had to go to the post office to mail back some clothes that didn't fit the kids. The line was huge. I stood there for 30 minutes behind a man who was trying to ship a giant, awkwardly shaped piece of furniture without a box. The postal worker was arguing with him about the dimensions, and the man kept insisting it was standard size. I stood there staring at the back of his head, thinking about bloodlines and Catherine's vision. When I got home, Mark was already there. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a folder in front of him. He looked exhausted. "I talked to Steve," he said. "He says we can set up a separate trust for our kids. He says he can move some of the money back if we just sign a few undas. He says it'll protect us all." I didn't even look at the folder. I walked over to the counter and pulled out my iPad. I opened the family assets file and the screenshots of the prenatal care payments. "I talked to your mother," I said. He flinched. "Nancy, please, she just wants what's best for the family." "But the family," I said. "Which family? The one we've been building for 15 years. Or the one you and your mother are building in a luxury apartment on the west side?" He started to say something, but I slid the iPad across the counter. I had a specific email open, one from Catherine to Steve Price from 3 months ago. "Listen to this," I said. "Steve, ensure that Mark understands the necessity of the transition. If Nancy becomes suspicious, we will simply frame it as a business investment gone wrong. She's too focused on the day-to-day to see the bigger picture." Mark looked at the screen. He didn't say anything for a long time. "She said that?" he whispered. "She thinks I'm just the day-to-day person, Mark," I said. "She thinks I'm just the one who handles the mortgage and the laundry and the kids' schedules. She thinks I'm too blind to see what's happening." He looked up at me, and for the first time, he looked actually scared. Not scared of the law, but scared of me. "I didn't know she felt that way about you," he said. "I don't care how she feels about me," I said. "I care about the $12,000 missing from our savings, and the $300 added to my mortgage." I walked over to the pantry and noticed we were out of paper towels. I made a note on my phone to add them to the shopping list. "What now?" he asked. "Now," I said. "Gonna go start dinner. The kids are hungry." I turned my back on him and started boiling water for pasta. I could hear him sitting there, staring at the iPad. I didn't look back. I just watched the water start to bubble, thinking about how much detergent it would actually take to get those white streaks out of the soccer jerseys. The kids came running into the kitchen, yelling about a school project. Mark didn't move. He just stayed in the chair frozen, while I stirred the pasta. So I'm finally posting this because I honestly can't believe this was my life for the last few years. Last Tuesday started out pretty normal. I was at Kohl's doing a bunch of Amazon return some sneakers that didn't fit, and some kids' pajamas that were basically sandpaper. I was stuck in line for 20 minutes, behind this woman who was screaming at the employee about a tiny snag in a dress, insisting it was a manufacturer defect. The employee just had this totally blank look on her face. I stood there for a minute, staring at the back of the woman's head, thinking about how much I hated the smell of that store. While I was waiting, I checked my mortgage app to see the property tax escrow. I saw an alert saying our monthly payment was jumping. Another $300 because the escrow was short. I just stared at the screen. Mark had been managing the estate money, but somehow we were still short on the house. Anyway, I finished my returns, got my coupon, and drove to a law office on the other side of town. I didn't want a consultante, wanted a divorce attorney who dealt with high-asset fraud. Her name was Sarah. She had a tiny, boring office. I didn't give her some long, emotional backstory. I just opened my laptop and showed her the private Google Drive folder. I showed her the family assets PDF, the shots of the prenatal care payments, the deleted photos of Alina, and that email from Catherine telling me I was too day-to-day to notice the bigger picture. Sarah scrolled through everything for about 10 minutes without saying much. Then she looked at me. "Yeah, look, the cheating is one thing," she said, "but the money stuff? That's actually illegal. Depending on how the trust is set up, Mark could actually be looking at criminal charges for fraud." I asked if we could use that. "Absolutely," she said. "He's terrified of prison, and his mother is terrified of a scandal. This gives you all the leverage. You don't want a 50-50 split. You want the house, full custody, and a huge chunk of whatever is left of that inheritance in a protected account for the kids, something Mark can't touch." I asked how long it would take. If we play this right, a week. Hell, sign whatever you put in front of him just to keep this out of a courtroom. I left and went to the grocery store. I needed milk, eggs, and those goldfish crackers the youngest likes. I spent way too long comparing two brands of olive oil. Because one was on sale but the bottle was smaller. I don't know. I just needed to focus on something that actually made sense. When I got home, Mark was in the living room with a glass of scotch. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you said. I want to make it right. I can talk to Steve and we can move some money back into the joint account. Maybe 10,000 to start." I didn't even look at him. I just went into the kitchen and started putting the groceries away. 10,000, I said. That doesn't even cover the escrow shortage. And the rent you've been paying for that apartment for 6 months. "I'm trying, Nancy," he said. "I'm not interested in you trying." I walked over to the table and slid a manila folder across the surface. "Read this." He frowned and opened it. It wasn't the official divorce petition, yet just a summary of the evidence with timestamps. The prenatal receipts, the emails from Catherine, and a note from Sarah explaining the legal definition of estate fraud. Mark started flipping through the pages. I could see the exact moment he hit the part about the criminal charges. He went pale almost instantly. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "I have a Google Drive, Mark. Remember, I'm the day-to-day person. I'm very good at organizing files." He looked like he was actually going to be sick. "You're going to report me? You'd put me in jail." "I don't know," I said. "I guess that depends on how much of the house I get to keep. And how much of the inheritance goes to the kids." He didn't say anything for a long time. He just sat there holding the papers. "What do you want?" he asked. "The house, full custody. A lump sum from the estate funds enough to pay for the kids' college and make sure we never have another escrow shortage. And I want you to deal with your mother and Alina. Your own time. I don't want to hear their names in this house again." "That's everything," he whispered. "I'll have nothing left." "You have a luxury apartment and a baby on the way," I said. "I'm sure you'll manage." He tried to argue. He started talking about how unfair it was, how he'd worked hard for his career, how the kids needed their father. I just leaned against the counter and tuned him out. I was basically just waiting for him to stop talking so he could agree. "Fine," he said. "Fine, I'll sign." The next 3 days were just a blur of digital signatures and emails. Sarah handled everything and Mark signed the DocuSign from his office. Then I got a call from Catherine. She didn't call to apologize. She wanted to discuss the optics of the separation. "Nancy," she said in that same fake polished tone, "I understand you've reached an agreement with Mark, but I find the terms excessive. There is no need to be vindictive. The family name is at stake here. The family name is already in a trust for a secret baby." "Catherine," I said, "I think the optics are already pretty bad. We can settle this quietly," she said. "If you reduce the settlement amount, I can ensure that the remaining estate funds are managed more efficiently." "Not interested in your fancies," I said. "I'm interested in my kids' stability. If you or Steve Price contact me again, I'm sending the full folder to the district attorney. I don't care about the family name. I care about my bank account." There was a long silence. For the first time, she actually sounded rattled. "You've become very cold, Nancy," she said. "I don't care about the family name, Catherine. I care about the fact that you guys stole from my kids. Don't call me again." I hung up. Friday was Mark's day to move the rest of his things out. He had a moving truck in the driveway, and some guys helping him load the heavy furniture, his leather chair, some boxes of books, and his golf clubs. I stood on the porch and watched them. I was wearing an old t-shirt and leggings, holding a list for the pharmacy, because I needed kids' vitamins and ibuprofen. Mark walked up to me as they were loading the last of his stuff. He looked older. That Emma Johnson ego was just gone. "I can't believe you're actually doing this," he said. "Just wiping me out." "You wiped us out, Mark," I said. "You just did it in a way that looked like a luxury apartment and a mood board for a nursery." "I loved you," he said. I looked at him. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just done, like I was listening to a story I'd already heard a million times. "I'm sure you did," I said, "in your own way." He started to say something else, but then his phone buzzed. He sighed and looked back at me. "Alina is having a contraction," he whispered. "I have to go. Good luck with the baby," I said. He got into his car and drove away. As the truck pulled out, I noticed a streak of grease on the driveway. I wondered if I should get the power washer out, or if I could just scrub it with some soap. I went back inside. The house was quiet. I walked into the laundry room and saw the soccer jerseys. I'd washed them again, and this time, I'd used the right amount of detergent. No white streaks. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop for one last thing. I went into our shared iCloud account. Sarah told me to keep the photos as a backup, but I went into the shared calendar. I found the entries for the Bloom maternity clinic and the dinner with Steve dates and hit delete. Then I deleted Mark's contact info from the house stuff folder and the login for the streaming service he'd set up with that secret email. I deleted the family assets PDF from the shared drive and moved my own copy into a folder labeled Archives. I closed the laptop. I looked around the kitchen. There was a crumb on the counter from the kids' breakfast, so I grabbed a paper towel and wiped it away. The refrigerator hummed. The house felt empty, but it didn't feel stressful. It just felt like a house. I checked my watch, 3:30 p.m. I had to leave in 15 minutes if I wanted to beat the traffic to Steve's. The drive-thru is always backed up on Friday afternoons. I grabbed my keys and my purse, paused to look at the empty spot where his leather chair used to be, and shrugged. I walked out the door, locked it and pulled out of the driveway, making sure not to drive over the oil stain.